So you have 1.4 million sitting in a non-qualified deferred compensation plan. Let's say you spend 20 years building up that balance, and then sometimes in the next few years, that money is going to flow out and hit your tax return. Here's the mistake I see. You're probably going to see that you made this distribution decision at open enrollment around a decade ago without a financial planner in the room. And you made this decision before you knew what your retirement income picture would actually look like. Under Section 409A of the tax code, you basically can't change it. If you elected a lump sum at retirement, you're looking at a $1.4 million income hit on your tax return. Federal and state combined, on a distribution of that size, you're probably looking at a bill that's somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000. And this isn't even a technicality that you can plan around. This is deferred income. Every dollar is ordinary income when it comes out. Executives who keep most of their deferred compensation are not the ones who earned the most necessarily. They're the ones who planned their distribution years before retirement. So in this video, I'm going to show you what these decisions can look like, and if your election is already locked in, what you can still do about it. My name is Bjorn Amundsen, and I'm a certified financial planner at Quarry Hill Advisors. Our practice specializes in working with executives and high-income professionals. A lot of executives make 3 non-qualified distribution decisions without any real understanding of their tax consequences. The first decision is when to start your distributions: retirement, 1 year after, or a fixed future date. Decision 2, how do you spread it out? Lump sum, 5-year, 10-year, or 15-year installments? Decision 3, how are you going to sequence the non-qualified deferred compensation with everything else? Social Security, RMDs, investment income, each one of those things is going to compound on each other. Get any single one wrong, and you're going to be handing $75,000 or even $150,000 back to the IRS. If you get all 3 wrong together, the number could be even higher. There's 3 specific misconceptions with these decisions that I see executives carry about the non-qualified deferred compensation distributions that can often cost them 6 figures. Understanding them is the difference between someone who walks out of retirement with a balance they built and one who hands a third of it to the IRS. First, the lump sum default. The default election at most companies is a lump sum at separation from service. A lot of people just keep that default, not because they've modeled the tax outcome or even thought about it, but just because that's what the default was. But here's what actually happens. If you're 62 and you retire with about 1.4 million in non-qualified deferred compensation and you elect a lump sum, at that income level in 2025, you're going to be in the 37% tax bracket on the majority of the distribution. And if you add in your state, whether it's Minnesota, California, or New York, you're looking at a combined marginal rate of 45 or even 50% on that top portion. On 1.4 million at 40% effective rate, your tax bill might be over $560,000 in a single year. So let's talk about the installment alternative. If that same executive had elected a 10-year installment instead of just 1 year after retirement, then the math can completely change. Each year, you're pulling out something like $140,000. On a joint return with moderate other income, your rate might be as low as 24% or in the 26% range. The tax on $140,000 at 26% blended rate, that's roughly $36,000 per year. So over 10 years, that's just $360,000 in taxes. The difference between the lump sum and the 10-year scenario there is almost $200,000 that stays in your pocket rather than going to the IRS. The same 1.4 million, the same number of years, but a $200,000 outcome. Number 2, the 409 lock. A lot of executives hear about installment elections, and the first question they have is, can I change mine? IRC Section 409A, the answer is not easily and not immediately. The rules look like this. Once you've made a distribution election, you can change it, but only under specific conditions. The new election has to be filed at least 12 months before the original distribution date. So if that's at retirement and you're a long ways off from that, no problem for you there. The second thing, and I did just see this the other day, is that the new election must defer the distribution for at least 5 years. So if you elected a lump sum at retirement and now you're 3 years from retiring at 62, here's your option. You can file and change this year and push the distribution to start at 67 rather than 62. That's the 5-year deferral requirement. You don't eliminate the lump sum option, but you can postpone it. For executives who are 7 or more years for retirement, this window might actually be useful. If you're 55 and you realize that you've made probably a bad decision for your election because maybe your life changed or you didn't think about it in the first place, you can change it. As long as you're okay with delaying that start for 5 years, the change is valid under 409A. Now, for executives who are only 2 or 3 years out, the math is going to get a little harder. The 5-year deferral might push your distribution into years that you didn't plan for. If your lump sum now triggers at age 67, that might be the same time as when your required minimum distributions are going to begin at age 73. You could end up stacking income problems on top of each other into your late 60s instead of solving them. So the window is real, and most executives don't figure it out until after it closes. So let's stop here for a hypothetical case study. We'll talk about David and Caroline. David is 59. He's a vice president of operations at a medical device company in the Twin Cities. He's been there for 21 years, and he's now got $1.4 million in his non-qualified deferred compensation plan. He enrolled way back at the age of 42. And at open enrollment, because he wasn't really paying attention and didn't know what to do, he just kept the default, which was a lump sum at separation from service. Form just defaulted there, so he kept it. Now he's got some other assets, of course. He's got $1.8 million in a traditional IRA and 401k, and we'll say he has $280,000 in a Roth and maybe $400,000 in a taxable brokerage account. His wife, Caroline, is 57. She does some consulting work and makes about $60,000 per year and plans to keep doing that. So here's David's plan. He wants to retire at 63 and spend $150,000 per year after tax. And lucky for them, they own their house outright. So when he maps out year 1 of retirement, he realizes he has a problem. He's going to have a $1.4 million distribution from his deferred compensation, plus $60,000 from Caroline's consulting, and then maybe another $30,000 of investment income. The total is nearly $1.5 million in taxable income. At $1.5 million in 2025, the federal taxes alone are going to be more than $480,000. And then, of course, since he lives in Minnesota, that's going to bring his effective rate to over 39%, making his tax bill something like $580,000. Oh, wait, but there's more. Medicare looks back 2 years to determine what your IRMAA charges are going to be. So when he turns 65, his Medicare premiums are going to be an extra $7,000 per person per year above the base premium. So that's an additional $14,000 per year in Medicare when he turns 65. Another problem is that because of his high income this year, that's going to mean he can't make a Roth conversion. With income over $700,000, every dollar they might convert to a Roth would be taxed at the 37% federal level. So they lose a year on one of their most valuable Roth conversion windows of their life. So let's say he decides to change to a 10-year installment scenario. If he does this, the first thing it's going to do is delay when he receives the money by 5 years. So he doesn't get it until 68. He can do this because he has that brokerage account he can live off of for the first 5 years, right? Year 1 of retirement at age 63, there's going to be no deferred compensation income at all, just investment income and Caroline's consulting income. So the total taxable income is going to be somewhere between $100,000 and $90,000. This means it'll be taxed at about 22% on that highest margin. Once he turns 68, they'll have $140,000 per year in non-qualified deferred compensation distributions plus Caroline's income. The joint income is going to be in the $200,000 to $220,000 range, with federal and state taxes adding up to about $52,000 a year. That blended rate would be about 24%. By doing this, they'll also stay below the Medicare surcharge level, and so they'll save those IRMAA charges. This also opens up a great opportunity for Roth conversions, especially that first 5 years when they don't have any deferred compensation. So they'll be able to get more than 80 to 100,000 per year from their IRA into their Roth. And by doing that, they'll probably have about 800,000 or a million moved into their Roth accounts by the time required minimum distributions start. Their required minimum distributions will be lower for life because of this and won't overlap with the deferred compensation as much as they would have. So the lifetime tax difference between David's current lump sum election and the installment alternative, it might be more than $150,000. Not from better investing, not from different returns, but just from a checkbox. Okay, now let's talk about 3 other traps that there are for deferred compensation. The first one is you need to remember that deferred compensation is a general obligation of the company. They are not your assets until they are paid by the company. So if your company goes bankrupt, you could lose the whole thing. That's why we want to be careful to not have too much of your retirement assets locked up in your deferred compensation. In David's case, he has nearly 50% of his retirement assets in deferred compensation. If his company were to go bankrupt, and it might over a period of 10 years or something like that, he could stand to lose a very large amount of this. Now, it's unlikely, but you can't be too careful about these things. The second trap is that you can have non-qualified deferred compensation installments run all the way into your required minimum distribution years. So if you were to retire at 62 and take 15-year installments, those distributions will run until you're 77, and required minimum distributions will probably start at age 73. So from age 73 forward, those non-qualified deferred compensation installments will stack on top of your required minimum distributions. And so some of that combination might force your income above 400,000 exactly at the ages where you don't want to have a tax surprise. So here's your solution, and this is also good given the possibility of loss of one of these plans, is to shorten your installment window. Start 1 year after retirement and make sure you clear all of the payments before your mid-70s. The next trap, which interacts with the previous trap, is you may block Roth conversion window. If you're in your early 60s, you're often in the most valuable Roth conversion window time of your life. You've stopped earning a salary, income drops, required minimum distributions haven't started. If your non-qualified deferred compensation pushes you into $1.5 million of income, you might miss that window entirely. If you spread the distributions over 5 years or 10 years, you might leave some room under the 24% tax bracket, and then you could convert 80 to 100,000 per year at favorable rates before your required minimum distributions force you to take the income you don't want. The interaction between the non-qualified deferred compensation timing and Roth conversions is where the most sophisticated planning happens and where most of the money can be saved or lost. Now, before we move on, I want to mention something. If you're wondering whether this applies to you and your specific situation, and maybe you're trying to figure out if you should do a lump sum or spread things out, we offer a complimentary retirement readiness review. So just click the first link in the description. We can do one of these in about an hour, and there's no cost to you. Now, what do you do if you're already locked in? So here are your 4 potential moves you can make. Move 1, you can file the 409 change election now if you qualify. Remember, this window will close permanently once you're within 12 months of the distribution. Make sure you work with a CFP who understands the 409A before this option disappears. Section, move 2, you can front load a donor advised fund if you have a high income year. A large donor advised fund contribution creates a dollar for dollar deduction against ordinary income. So if you had too much income and maybe you contributed $150,000 or $200,000 of appreciated stock to a donor advised fund in that lump sum year, it could offset your amounts of non-qualified deferred compensation income. You can still grant to the donor advised fund from the charities that you care about over time. Move number 3, you could retire on a timeline that creates a low income bridge year. Retiring 6 months earlier than planned produces a partial year salary situation, and that calendar year income could be lower than a full year, which might reduce the total impact of a distribution landing in that same year. Move number 4, you can open the Roth conversion window in years 2 through 5. Once the lump sum year passes and the income resets, you might have a conversion window that opens up. Convert aggressively from traditional IRA to Roth in the 22 to 24% tax bracket while your income is lower. Some might cost you real money, but then the years after that, you might partially be able to recover your loss. Before we go, let's recap. You can now understand the 3 distribution decisions that determine your non-qualified deferred compensation outcome. We've seen that the difference between a lump sum and 10-year installments can cost you real dollars, and you have a framework for managing the situation regardless of where your election stands. Your specific election, your company's plan rules, your income mix, and your state of residence, all of that will shape which of these moves is best for you. I can't solve that for you on a YouTube video. What you should do is click the first link in the description and schedule your complimentary retirement readiness review, and we'll do the analysis for your situation. Thanks for your time and attention, and we'll see you in the next video.